How fast can a disease truly break into a population? I think given the year of our Lord 2020, we have seen how fast things can go from bad to worse just by living standardly, I suppose. Now, what if the disease can hold you down and bite your face off? Well, then it becomes an infinitely more crappy situation. In the events of This Is Not a Test, as everyone is caught completely off guard one morning, it goes from quiet neighborhood getting ready for work and school to an all-out end or be ended brawl in the streets. As infected rapidly overwhelm the non-infected, they start doing some fairly bizarre things which should be noted, such as waiting and being quiet in order to hear others who may not be infected. Given the situation, Sloane attempts to survive the outbreak and collect her sister as well to, escape the area. But more to our point, what is this infection and why are the symptoms a clear indication of what's happening to the brain? Well, let's discuss that and more as we cover This Is Not a Test. We kick off today's story with this being our Lord and Savior Shudder. Everyone asks where I get these Z-grade movies from. Well, now you know. And brother, I absolutely love it. Back when I was a youngling, dude, Sci-Fi Channel every weekend. Anyways, as the sound draws in, it's a beautiful sunset in suburbia. I actually had a real estate agent try to sell me a sunset, right? And said it was worth an extra $200K on the house a month because of the view of the sky. Absolute crackhead. Anyways, as a girl sits in a bathtub rubbing her radial artery, she has a nice cry. Hearing a banging on the door, she then shouts out to her old man as toast is being made. Reading the paper, the girl then makes her toast as he tells her to stop huffing. They have a pretty nice passive-aggressive argument, which I don't know where it turns into an aggressive argument, as then he asks if she's actually sick. Well, bro, congrats on being left in a nursing home with no family coming to visit you whatsoever. This is how you do that. He then tells her they don't waste food in this house, and then they hear a woman yelling at the door for help. He tells her to stay there, as sirens can be heard next. At this point, there are accidents and fighting all over the neighborhood that explode at once. Father Dearest then comes in covered in blood as he tells her they need to leave immediately. Going outside, people are flooring it and running, getting grabbed by others, and then eaten. As the girl watches this, some of the infected then stop and look at her. Yes, this is a really good time to shut the door. As the woman approaches, she continues looking at her as her old man grabs her and throws her inside. Locking the door, she then bangs on it as he tells her to get into the basement. Hearing glass break at the front of the house, she's in the building. Standing up, she starts hissing. Now that's probably a good sign, as the dad then tackles her, and she is crashing out hard. Trying not to get bit, bro does get bit, and gets some delicious arm flesh taken out. He grabs some glass and then starts stabbing her, but it's not very successful until he goes for the eyes, which, ouchies. Well, problem solved there, I suppose, and the daughter runs off after witnessing this horrific situation, taking her chances with the zombies, and then she starts getting chased. Granted, they're actually infected, as Wild Such Gaming would say, but luckily, she did her cardio, as This Is Not a Test comes up. As death metal starts playing, we ride through suburbia once more to see, now it's all on fire. Over at a school, some younglings are stuck in there. They hear something as they say there's only one car in the parking lot, so someone is actually there. Hearing a radio play in, assumedly the principal's office, they enter and find he's face down. Well, someone's face down anyhow. And he's been bitten. Following the music, they continue hearing a banging noise from further in. Rounding the corner, clearly whoever it is infected. Oh, it's Mr. Lively. Not looking so lively anymore, turning around, Prometheus tells him, "It's for you," as then he smashes him in the head with a phone. Okay, so maybe not that lame of a joke, but whatever. Leon Kennedy would have said it. Anyways, doing what needs to be done, that's all she wrote for Mr. Deadly. Witnessing that, Broham then puts the phone down as he turns off the radio. However, you know what's better than listening to a radio, which then would attract zombies? Today's sponsor. But first, this episode is sponsored by Raycon. The Bone Connection headphones are perfect back-to-school companions. Click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/RoanokeBC to get 20% off. Thanks to Raycon for sponsoring. Are you ready to have music blasted straight into the bones of your skull in crystal clear quality? I mean, it is August, which means it's almost the Burr months, which means October is right around the corner. So basically, it works perfectly here. Back to school season is here, and when I was a young buck, these would have been perfect for my after-school workouts or when I went running. Hugging the sides of your head, it allows your ear canals to stay open so you can hear the world around you, while you also listen to music. With their 13-hour battery life, IP68 waterproof and dust-proof design, which means sweat won't mess them up, they provide maximum comfort while you move. I found I really like them when I'm working on a car or going for a walk because A, I don't like my girlfriend sneaking up on me while I'm under the hood of a car, and B, I don't want to be hit by a car on a walk, so, it helps. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, then the Bone Conduction headphones are the perfect back-to-school companion for you. Click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/RoanokeBC to get 20% off. So anyways, taking the radio with them, thank God you guys have an absolute tank on your team. Fortifying the perimeter, they then block off the doors and paper up the windows to prevent anything from looking in. Bloodface then goes off and has a nice cry, which is Sloane, which I didn't know for the first few minutes, and then calling out to her, she ignores them as she is trying to make a call to whoever Lily is. Bro, why not just answer the people you're with? So calling them, it says, listen closely. Once you have found a secure location, as then she's scared and she drops the phone. The infection so far is spread by bites only. Their blood is not infected. Could it be the mythical, well, I dare not say what virus it is yet, but you probably already know. And if you don't, then you're new here. So what's going on, bro? So hearing on the loudspeaker to basically just stay where you are, help will come soon, lock the doors and cover the windows, yeah, they're definitely nuking this place for sure. Drinking some water, Mop Top then tells Sloane that she's gonna be okay, as then we head to one day earlier. In the road, she's watching everyone absolutely lose it, as somehow she isn't being attacked as they run past her. Not really sure why she gets spared. It seems like they would just go after whoever's closest, but others give chase as she almost immediately gets hit by a car. Heading to a house, the door is locked. Going around back, she didn't pass the fitness gram pacer test, so pull-ups are a bit difficult for her, as eventually, though, she makes it because she's just probably like absolutely pumping adrenaline. Of course, the infected are good at breaking things, so they just kind of keep going after her. Hiding behind some bushes, a quadruped barks in the distance. Mop Top then finds her, as this is how she actually met up with that group. A loudspeaker goes off saying, this is not a test. Ah, he said it. Also, running in the cold, horrible on the lungs. One woman has crashed, as then she gets out of the car as the other younglings, which are hers, get out. How did you wreck that car, by the way? You only literally need to do like 20 miles per hour in the minivan. This could have been so easy. So over at a barricade, everyone is upset at the soldiers there, which makes sense. They fire off a round to calm down the crowd, which goes over about as well as the wet fart in church. The sirens then cut off as apparently the infected don't go after dogs, which is nice. However, Grandma Matilda is still on the menu. Walking into the evening, they enter a house as Tank then yells at the people's mom for some reason. She tells them, noise is what attracts them. It's not light. And don't you ever talk to me that way again. It do be that way. You can't be yelling at moms out here. So walking around, he finds a bat on the ground. The house appears to be somewhat clear as they decide to hold it there for now. So they go upstairs, right? And then Tank tells the mom she needs to go downstairs. Basically, she tells him pound sand and who put him in charge, resulting in one of those arguments that are quietly had, but everyone can still hear them. You know the ones. So she says, no, we're going to stay upstairs. That's how we got out of the house originally in the first place. If we were downstairs, we would have been totally screwed. Cleaning their wounds and just sort of hanging out, everyone is bitterly bummed out as Sloane starts passing out in the corner. Why these houses are empty is beyond me, but having a dream sequence clearly, the sister then tells her she's going to be late for school as Sloane goes and gets ready. Stealing some money from the old man. Man, this whole family is just a little bit wild, as Lily says she will drive Sloane to school so that she's not late. Why not just go disheveled to school if you're so worried about being late to school? I'm not sure, as she starts crying about Lily moving out. Listening to some death metal on the way to school, it's a nice, foggy, snow-melty, disgusting kind of weather day. Dropping off Sloane, Lily then gives her a card for her birthday. Watching her go to school, it's a really weird drop-off as Lily appears to be tearing up over it. She ain't coming back, is she? So walking up, hearing a banging noise, Tank then goes first as the mom looks down the stairs at what's making it. It doesn't sound like an infected according to Tank. It sounds like some kind of animal. Kind of like the infected, so he goes down to confront it as he's stopped by the mom. He says they have to secure the place first and foremost because where else are they going to go? The window is broken, which is not a good sign, as infected are already in there, as Tank then takes one out. The mom goes to the front door and immediately starts yelling that they're trapped. Well, 2 is hardly a trap. It just doesn't seem like that detrimental. They already took out one, so moving out the other way, they start running down the fence line to escape. Hopefully they don't meet a somewhat different but almost completely identical group to them. So spotting the school, Tank says it's their best bet. Windows are reinforced as the mom then takes off running after asking if it's clear. This guy literally looks down the road and he's like, I don't really know, I think it's clear. Almost immediately, it's not clear, right? The reason I'm saying this is I want you to note this moment. Tank did nothing wrong. Yeah, there was a better way to do this, by the way. You could have done this quietly. Telling them to run, she's then overwhelmed and torn apart. I mean, there's like zero caution taken by anybody here. Has nobody ever heard of just sneaking? Sloane then gets tackled next and everyone starts getting knocked down. Tank gets his tail off of him as Mop Top smacks the other woman and then gets the other woman off of Sloane. The rest of the horde then chases the group as they head to the school, which brings us around to where we are today. Waking up from nap time in the gym, Sloane, the water is still running. You may want to clean your face off, or at least something. Pulling out the note, it's from Lily, I imagine. No, it's not. This is her note. Yes, it's her, fare thee well note, I guess. Anyway, it's hard to tell what it is, but taking my advice, she finally heads to the bathroom. I mean, have you ever smelled blood before? Like, I'm asking you. You don't really want to smell like that with it all over your face for really that long. Iron and sickly sweet. Ugh. Anyways, washing the blood off, keep it out of your mouth because normal bloodborne pathogens do still exist. And having a nice look at herself, it flashes back to Lily apologizing to Sloane about leaving. The old man comes in yelling for Sloane as Lily tells her dad to basically chill out, and this turns into a pretty brutal fight. Lily gets knocked down the stairs, and Sloane, I think it might be time to seek out straight up emancipation at this point, because this guy totally blows. He needs to be put down like the animal he is. So Sloane comes back into the gym as they ask her where she was. They're all pretty paranoid. Mop Top and Tank went and then grabbed food for everyone, and then they ask what everyone is doing today as Tank then starts talking about what they should do. So I'm just going to call the other two, well, one's Grace, that's obviously the girl, and then I'm going to call it Emo Boy. Anyway, so they lost their mom, so they're upset at him for saying that the road was clear when clearly it wasn't. And then they're like, well, who put you in charge? So they punch Tank, which, I mean, I guess you gotta remember these are basically teenagers. Frontal lobes are not fully formed yet, though these are actresses and actors from their 20s. So, again, Tank looked. It's not his fault that they ran around the corner as soon as the mom took off. So, anyways, the group is breaking down a bit as Sloane then goes to the courtyard to hang out for a moment, as the other girl then approaches holding clothes for her, asking her about the water, saying, ooh, is it actually really on? They then go to shower, taking Sloane with her so that the infected cannot just sneak up on one another, as Sloane then checks herself for any bites. No bites, just broken blood vessels in the skin from a huge douche. Having completed Operation Get the Infected's Blood Off of Your Face, the girl then asks Sloane, I'm not sure why I call her the girl, Grace then asks Sloane what she saw in the street, trying to confirm if Tank just let her mom go to her doom. Sloane then talks to Mop Top about the last time that she was in class and how everything was all normal. Entering the classroom then grabs some stuff as they ask if this is the government or global. Tank thinks that, if it was just here and it was the government, then they probably would have blown up the place by now. So it could be the government, but it's probably global, given that, you can't nuke everywhere all at once. Tank doesn't think it was the flu, though, from a few weeks ago, as then we jump over to Sloane running for some reason. I thought she was just doing laps. She's actually not, but you should be working on your cardio nonetheless. Got to keep those red blood cells functional and supplied. Of course, as she drops down to breathe, the infected start banging on the front door. Realizing the infected know that they're in there, it's kind of a real issue they got going on. Finding the one door in particular is still okay. It's due to the high fence that surrounds the field that this door actually opens up to. Not being able to sleep with them trying to break in, Mop Top then finds Sloane, as he says they have been looking for her for like an hour. He says they don't like her wandering off, as she's like, okay, well, I'm still going to. It's interesting how the hierarchies are trying to form, like Lord of the Flies here, but everybody's just like, I'm just going to do what I want anyways. So anyways, saying her family is dead like his. Okay, Sunshine, nice. Maybe he did like his family, though. He knows some information about her, as when they talk. And as they do, the entire building shudders. The infected at this point all start leaving. Whatever the explosion is got their attention. Continuing to hide in the gym, they then eat, and the other guy, or Emo Boy really, asks for the keys to go explore. Tank says that's probably not a good idea, as he says, well, I don't care. Nah, right then. So he gives them the keys as then they head to the teacher's lounge. Finding some beverages, they bring it back as they all start taking some swigs. Handing it to Tank, he declines at first, but then he's like, you know what, screw it. So he starts drinking as well. They play Never Have I Ever, which, if you've ever played that game, it always devolves into the one cool guy saying he's done all the cool things. It's really annoying. Like, never have I ever done a front flip off a 3-story building and landed on my feet and didn't break anything. This guy's like, pass me the bottle, bro. Like, no, dude, you didn't do it. You didn't do the thing that you said. Anyways, that night, as everyone sleeps merrily heading towards their first hangover, someone reaches out for Sloane, touching her head. Now, you think it's a dream sequence. It is a bad touch, a very bad touch, but it's not a dream sequence. Waking up, something reaches out for her as she sees her dad, except this part was just a bad dream. Her dad is definitely infected and gone. Well, gone for now. He might come back or something. Anyways, going to get water, someone moves behind her. Waking up Grace, she tells them that some guy is here. Mop Top then goes to look around with them as they do hear movement. Approaching a door, they find someone in there with a force multiplier. Taking it from him, he then wakes up as Tank asks him how he even got in there in the first place. Giving him food, he then scarfs it down as he says how he got there. He says they are safe there, but apparently not so safe as, he got in. And also he's like, well, I don't know how I got in. He remembers everything else, but he doesn't remember how he got in. Yeah, it's like, okay, this guy's straight lying. Telling them not to call him Mr. Baxter, as clearly he's not his teacher anymore, or their teacher. He tells them it's quieter out there now, so the infected have learned to wait. So it's incredibly not safe. Sloan then asks why he was watching her in the hallway. She accuses him of watching them sleep. He then's like, you know, the world can be a lonely place, even for someone as beautiful as you. Whoa! That is not a good sign. So Mop Top has the force multiplier, as Sloan then says she doesn't trust him. Good call on that. Tank then leads him to the bathroom, as she says she knows he touched her face while she was sleeping. Tank then calls out to the teacher as he realizes he has been bitten. Taking the force multiplier, Tank then accuses him of being infected. Asking to see the bite, he tells them it's not what they think it is. Yes, bro, because you've been so truthful up until this point. Taking off running, that's what an uninfected person does. Like, there's always this one guy who's bitten and then just starts wearing sweaters for no reason. That joke has been stolen. It is an actual joke. Like, I gotta just tell you straight up. I don't remember the comedian. Somebody said it. Anyways, I'm not trying to pill his joke, but it's true. There's always a guy who gets bitten and it's like, oh, I know it's 90 degrees out here, but I'm gonna start wearing turtlenecks. So asking him how he got bitten, they then lost the force multiplier. Telling Sloan to put it down, they argue as he says he will just leave, which is probably, I mean, a good option, all things considering, though. You know, otherwise they're gonna just take you out. Telling them that if they force him out there, though he's gone anyhow, they don't really care. He tells the story of what happened. Basically, no heroes here. He left another guy behind before he ended up pulling him in, but then having to take him out. He says he's not infected because of that. Not sure how he came to that conclusion. You've been bitten. So, in what is very clearly the most, like, you're being trapped thing, he's like, okay, well, if you want me to go, open the door for me. And then Tank walks over like an idiot and then gets his arm bitten. Well, now you got a great situation where the guy now gets his revenge, allegedly. Not the guy, but the emo guy. They want to kick Tank out next. Instead, though, they go to clean out his wounds, as they aren't 100% sure if their teacher was actually infected or not. Grace decides to lock him up so they can keep an eye on him in case he isn't infected. Mop Top then talks to Sloan about if she cares about living. He says those that get bitten get really cold, which body temp drops, which is fairly interesting for when we move into the science portion. Asking how he knows that, his old man turned in front of him. He had to take out his dad as he attacked his mom, asking her not to judge him. Bro, I mean, you did what you had to do for Earth. An entire zombie parental group obliterated, and the infection quelled. Halo has ruined my brain, and the recent Halo has more ruined my brain. In fact, if you want to see me do a playthrough of that, you should go English. You should go check out Roanoke Games. That's where they're uploaded. Anyhow, so Tank is apparently banging Grace in the room as Sloan sees that. You guys could have closed the blinds at least. So she goes over to Mop Top and then talks to him as she's also interested, so they kiss. Everyone starts pairing up. Party at the end of the world, so to speak. So Tank and Grace then wrap it up as Grace says, they really never checked one of the rooms. Not knowing what they will really find down there, they head downstairs to the boiler room. Always a boiler room in these schools. Entering Nightmare on Elm Street, they then find their teacher wasn't lying. He really did give that dude's brain some fresh air down in the boiler room. Talking about 3 days, they need to get to Rayford in this new area, because apparently that's where the safe zone is. It's 100 miles away, guaranteed to be overrun by the time you get there. So their plan is to just get a car and take the back roads. They argue with each other about how they should do that as Sloan goes and then finds their teacher is in the hallway. Approaching with the force multiplier, he reaches out to them as Grace, for some god-awful reason, goes and starts touching him. Checking his pulse, he predictably turns as they fire a shot into him, with Tank having to finish him off. Now, Sloan allegedly touches the arm of Emo Boy here. You gotta remember that part. However, he just fired a shot into his sister. Nice, bro. Like, excellent firing there. Good job. Alright, so this guy doesn't get to hold the countermeasures anymore. I think at this point, you guys should probably just go to Rayford or whatever it's called. Sloan then approaches Tank, telling him that she's sorry. I mean, Tank is the only dude actually getting anything done at this point. Meanwhile, Crash Out then kicks Sloan as he comes into the gym and blames her for his bad marksmanship as they hold him down. Sloan has received a message as Lily texted Sloan saying the message says it's safe. They apparently did something to that one guy to prevent him from doing anything else to Sloan. Not sure what it was, as then they pack up their stuff and go get Lily before heading out to Rayford. So now Sloan goes on her own at this point. Again, bad idea with Mr. Crash Out over there, as he finds Grace and Crash Out in one room. They basically injured his leg to the point that he can't run. His whole family is gone, so he's a bit bummed out, as then he asks her to forgive him, as then he domes himself in front of her. Well, that's going to be mentally traumatizing. She then tells the guys that he's gone as they pack up their stuff. And I'll tell you, at this point, they are racking up a crazy amount of life-altering mental trauma. Eesh. So exiting the school, they climb the fence and then begin their walk out of there. Of course, the ground is covered in infected just laying there, which is a bit suspicious. And then taking them out, the heads have become a little brittle from the cold, as in they also are just completely run out of ammo. And then getting chased once more through the streets, perhaps nighttime would have been a much better time to try this. Accidentally starting the car alarms, the infected go after that as they slowly move through the area, having lost their tail. Moving in the backyards, they begin breaking into houses as alarms continue to go off. Finding the previous owners, Bro's eating something, and I guess he's gone. I have no idea why that guy met us in. So they need to get out of there, as Tank says he will go first to be the bait. Shouting at them, he then takes off running as they go the other way. Now, Tank is clearly the alpha Chad. But if I remember correctly, we never see him again. So rounding another house, they then see the one as they break through the lattice of the porch and hide. Some are laying down intentionally, which is not great, as they're going to wait for them to clear out as one begins walking by the lattice. Listening to him, he's groaning and upset, turning around and then walks off. Now that was anticlimactic. So hanging out down there for a few hours till the coast is clear, it finally does clear hours later as they take off running. Going to the next house, they climb up the 80s lattice as then she falls and makes a ton of noise doing so. Get into the second window of what I believe is her own house. Yep, there's all her crap. Closing the window, they then move to the rest of the house as they begin searching. Heading to the living room, yes, this looks pretty bad. Where's Papa Dearest? Heading to the kitchen because she hears something, she decides to head to the basement next. Calling out, Lily is down there apparently. Standing up, she's looking a little uneasy. Looking at Sloan. Bro, she's like 400% infected. Why are you just standing there? Being attacked, Sloan gets her down, as then she yells her name, which actually stops the attack for a moment, as then she crowbars her in the head. Yes, so home was in fact not safe. Mop Top comes down next as he hugs Sloan, and then she cries it out. Crappy situation for sure. Looks like the Padre was taken out as well, and then Lily got infected in the process. Flashing over to Lily's car, she finds the letter actually from Lily in the card, telling her to take it one day at a time, and that, there's also Dr. Mambo's on the card, which obviously makes people happier. She takes out the note, and I think this was her checkout note, as then she throws it out the window. The garage door opens as Mop Top throws some stuff in the back. Why would you open that first? Why? Keep that closed until the stuff is already in the back? Garage doors make a lot of noise? Whatever. Asking her if she's ready, they now head out to the alleged safe area, which again, experience shows probably isn't going to be safe. Oh, it was also Rayford. I don't know, did I call it Raymond? Anyways, thus concludes, this is not a test. Hello, and welcome to the science portion. So basically, teenagers with the ability to induce countermeasures with literally zero training, maybe not the best thing in the world. And in this world, it truly is a stay strapped or get clapped situation. So arguably, learn how to use your tools properly. Anyhow, so I think it's been forever since we've actually covered an infection movie, but at this point, this one was quite interesting for several reasons, because the disease lines up almost perfectly with what is being described symptomatically, and what it is actually showing us is not someone who has been neurologically destroyed, you could say, but simply a progression of a disease as it becomes more and more entrenched in the human meat suit. So I think the best approach for this is going to be to discuss what the disease actually does, what the disease might be as a result of what we are seeing, and then potentially cures for it, because horrifically, I believe the person is actually still in there. So let's begin with you. That's right, you are now in the movie. And unlike Sloan, when someone banged on your door like a huge dork, you went outside and looked around. Seeing your neighbor charging at you, you say, "Hey neighbor," as you're tackled through the front door. Tough break. Maybe the guy with blood all over his face and around his mouth was not a cool person to let get close to you. I have no idea why you would even do that and not shut the door, but here we are. As teeth sink into your arms, as you went for a defensive move, you're able to get the upper hand on the infected for a moment and then kick him out the door, but the damage is done. The mystery pathogen at this point has entered your bloodstream, but more importantly, based on what we will see, it appears to be neurotrophic in nature, meaning it goes after your nerves. It craves the electric boys, as we will come to find out. It is likely that once entering the bloodstream, this is more of an issue than it just going after, say, the peripheral nervous system and the limbs, but understand it's also affecting those as well, likely inducing a feeling of like pins and needles near the bite, as the nerves communicate with the brain that it's completely not cash money down here, as likely they will begin to misfire. As the infection is spread to the brain, typically the blood-brain barrier that exists to keep out pathogens and limit what can enter the neural space should stop it. This is because the brain is known as an immune-privileged site. If the immune system were to go full force in this area, this could probably damage the brain, which in turn would be highly detrimental to your survival, even if you get rid of the pathogen. Also, that fun fact that floats around the internet from time to time about the immune system not knowing you have eyes is so stupid and completely false. There is blood that goes to the eyes all the time. It's not like your immune system's like, wow, I can't go to this area. I wonder what lies beyond. The immune system is well aware. Boys crack aside, that's how passionately I feel about this. The immune system is well aware you have eyes. In fact, have you ever seen stars before? That's white blood cells moving through your capillaries, slowing everything down momentarily because of how large they are, which in turn shows up as a point of light in your vision because the retina gets activated. So, that is such a stupid fact. It's not a fact. It's a stupid made-up myth. Anyways, so the blood-brain barrier seems largely ineffective at keeping this pathogen in particular out. It's around this point that it is highly likely that the cerebral spinal fluid is also having the pathogen enter this area as well, because remember, the infection is not instant. There does appear to be an incubation time of a few hours or so, depending on the bite location, and if you get eaten versus escape with just a bite wound. You now have 3 points of attack happening all at once. The bloodstream delivering the pathogen to the brain, the peripheral nervous system likely transferring the infection to the central nervous system, and the spinal fluid itself containing the infection. If I didn't know any better, I'd say this sounds like a Lyssa virus. Perhaps even the most elusive of all viruses, the rabies virus, but that'd be crazy. So as the pathogen enters the brain, neuroinflammation will begin. Known as encephalitis, this is also not very cash money because as it inflames, so do to the meninges that are surrounding the actual brain. So encephalitis is inflammation of the brain itself. Meningitis is inflammation of the meninges. And this puts internal pressure on the brain as well as external pressure from the tissue swelling that is surrounding the brain. And it's not like the skull is really going to give, so this can cause tremendous impacts on the functionality of the anxiety fat in your skull. Neurons will begin to die off, starting in the cerebrum. And this is going to have profound effects on the infected's ability to actually control themselves, as we will see momentarily. As pressure increases, it feels like the worst headache you've ever had. Your limbs would start numbing out, your neck would feel stiff to the point that you couldn't even move, and likely it is around this point you would start becoming lethargic and slipping in and out of consciousness. This immune response is the body absolutely losing it due to the pathogen's presence. Macrophages would absolutely be dumping commands to induce histamine responses, with pyrogens cranking up to increase body temperature. Of course, that is about to go absolutely haywire, but on a cellular level. The body is responding to the infection, and in some cases destroying it if it's found out in the open. However, given its propensity to attack the nervous system, that's what makes it so difficult to fight. The body's natural wiring when it comes to neural infections is, ooh, I can't touch this. The immune system is basically forced to watch it happen as the pathogens give it a middle finger through the cell membrane, and it can do very little to stop it because of the nature of neural cells. Now, if the pathogen wanders too far outside of this protective area, it's going to get jumped by like 12 macrophages in a dendritic cell, taking its body back to the lymphatic system to see if any B cells recognize it, which it will do, but as long as it stays in the neural space, it is fundamentally safe. As inflammation rises, the brain continues to misfire until we get to the point that Mop Top noticed something from earlier. He described the infected as becoming extremely cold to the touch, right before they turn. And this is the hypothalamus, which is responsible for maintaining homeostasis and subsequently body temperature becoming completely dysregulated. The autonomic functioning is something that we never really have to think about, and it is amazing for that because right now we're all manually breathing. But at this point, because it is not doing what it needs to do, and I'm also manually breathing right now, crap, you cannot consciously will your body temperature to be in the right range. Of course, the question then is, why do they feel cold to the touch? Surely they didn't just dump off a ton of body heat. Well, they didn't. You still have your body heat, but how the hypothalamus regulates body temperature is through the activation of the sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous system. And brother, your nervous system is about to become exceedingly sympathetic to your plight. Given the abnormal signaling in the brain from neural inflammation, the sympathetic nervous system gets switched on excessively and doesn't switch off. Now you may wonder, well, what's the difference? Well, you can think of this mnemonic device, I guess. I made it up, so take it with a grain of salt. Think of your body as a system, and you as the person. If a fight comes up, then your body is sympathetic to your need to fight back. So the sympathetic nervous system response is the go time response. The parasympathetic response is what calms you down and downregulates the sympathetic response. So it's sympathetic to what's beside you, para, rather than what's you. So parasympathetic. Is it ripped from a biology textbook? Absolutely not. They would never try to confuse you like that. but it might help on an exam if you remember this, so you should be okay there. So anyways, once the sympathetic nervous system becomes active, this is where the cold comes from. So let me connect it this way. Have you ever been scared, like really scared? I, for one, hate flying. So when I get on a plane, my sympathetic nervous system is screaming at me, danger, because it evolved to fight saber-toothed cats, not enter a tube flying through the air at 30,000 feet. But it considers those to be the same thing. My feet and hands go cold. My muscles twitch. I am absolutely primed, but I can do absolutely nothing because I am flying, and it's just the way things are. That is the sympathetic nervous system response. That's why medications that actually subdue this process are so helpful. So in order to contend with any danger, the body will vasoconstrict the blood vessels on the surface of the skin and within the skin itself. And this does a few things. First, if you get injured, you will bleed a lot less. Second, the blood is focused in the muscles to keep them more oxygenated so that they can actually operate. The organs receive less blood as they are less important in a fight, so that's why if you eat and then do something that makes you feel nervous, you'll start to feel queasy because the organs are getting less blood to aid in digestion, so the food is just kind of sitting there. The brain will also receive more blood, so more oxygen in order to make quicker decisions. And this is all done on the behest of the norepinephrine response. This is the hormone that cranks up panic. Of course, usually this response is still mitigated even when scared. However, it's clear, given how cold the infected become, there is no counter to this response. The parasympathetic response has left the building, and as a result, the skin is absolutely vasoconstricted. Of course, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but this is how the infected are actually surviving the cold out there. When vasoconstriction happens, the blood is then forced towards the core and deeper into the body, meaning less heat loss through the skin. And given that they get up and then run around fairly often, they kind of heat back up and then lay down to preserve that heat. So at this point, given the running ability and stamina seen in the infected, the sympathetic response being shifted into maximum overdrive is pretty standard, and the adrenal glands are pumping epinephrine and norepinephrine into the bloodstream due to a misfiring in the brain. And this allows them to run faster, the heart rate to be higher, blood pressure and glucose burning is just increased dramatically. Essentially, the body is running on triple overtime status and burning through resources rapidly. And this would also induce other issues of extreme hunger. However, before that happens, the musculature system would be pumping energy into that fire at a much higher rate. It would be like building a bonfire versus a campfire. To keep the bonfire going at that rate, you need way more fuel, but it's brighter and warmer. The campfire is more like a human body that is not infected. It's lighting up the area and creating warmth, but in a more controlled manner, and it takes less energy, which means it's burning through your fuel reserves like way less. So given the adrenaline being dumped into the body as well as pain signals being completely ignored, which is great for the infected because as they are running at full speed all the time, muscle tears and damage are going to happen. We are talking about a ton of middle-aged to later-aged adults running around out there in suburbia. When is the last time any of them have lifted weights or gone for a run? Judging by how they look, very likely it's not happened in decades. Yet somehow they are able to catch up with teenagers who have been conditioned to run because they are in sports. There is nothing a middle-aged body loves more than explosive movement and prolonged exercise when it hasn't done any of that in a long time. The level of injuries sustained by the people infected would be immense. Muscle tears, tendon ruptures, broken bones in some cases. I mean, think about the knees of a 48-year-old. They may not even have cartilage anymore on those bad boys, and they are just pounding the pavement. The knees are screaming as damage is incurred, but the brain just simply isn't listening. Which, let's talk about that for a moment. So, as the infection process continues, we need to discuss the brain a little further because at this point, it's just straight up not having a good time, and it all goes back to the function of the hypothalamus. Again, this is the portion of the brain responsible for homeostasis, and with its own function dehomeoed, you could call it, this is having a cascading amount of consequences. As it dysregulates, one area known as the lateral hypothalamic area, which is associated with feeding and hunger, increases in communications, which means the brain is screaming, "Eat now." And given what the body is burning just by existing, it's not wrong. It will starve rather quickly if stores are not replenished. However, the hunger goes beyond just the meat suit signaling. It's affecting the core of the brain itself. Along with this, the paraventricular nucleus is kind of there to help suppress feeding, while the endocrine system is responding unusually. Well, in this case, if it's responding usually. Like when the sympathetic response is activated, you're not hungry. However, this is a bit of an unusual situation, so that is completely silenced. As a result, the person thinks they are starving while they are also moving. Along with this, the ventromedial hypothalamus, which is associated with satiety and eating, that bad boy is just switched off. So no satiety from eating is being felt, and extreme hunger is saturating the infected, which you're like, well, why? Well, it's going to cause you to become more bitey. It's a perfect recipe for humans to turn on humans and seek out nutrients. However, clearly, the quadrupeds do not get eaten. So why is this exactly? Well, horrifically, it probably comes down to recognition. Imagine you are starving. You go to a party with your friends, and they set a steak down in front of you with chocolate chip cookies, chips, and a burger. Why do these make you salivate? Well, for one, you're hungry, but also you recognize this as food that tastes good. Well, why, when you look at your friends, are you not trying to eat them? I mean, technically, we're all made of nutrients, well, right? So, it should be the same thing. Well, it's because your brain recognizes people are friends, not food, or at least it should anyhow. Unless you're John Wayne Gacy or whatever, then maybe it doesn't. Anyways, this infection fundamentally shifts this entire kind of thought process. The infected mind is working with literally zero breaks when it comes to aggression and consumption. The violence they experience is, in a way, due to their elevated adrenal response, but also their insatiable starvation. And much like when you're hungry, this increases aggression even more so, which is biologically ingrained in all of us. Basically, this is your body saying, oh, we are hungry, become aggressive, as that's more likely to help us get food. The amygdala will get involved, which should already be firing due to the swelling of the meninges, and the hypothalamus is completely dysregulated at this point, as well as the prefrontal cortex, which should be regulating everything or at least putting up somewhat of a fight, and it's dealing with its own internal pressure from itself and external pressure from the meninges. This is entirely disrupting the ability of it to talk to the rest of the brain and control it. This is also, like, let's say you get rabies, right? The reason you don't bite people is because your brain is still functioning, right? That's the important part about it. This type of virus actually kind of bypasses the entire thing, allowing your brain to basically become the animal that it needs to be to basically continue this pathogen onwards. So as these systems break down, the amygdala will report everything as a threat. The salient system, which is responsible for determining what is important right now versus what isn't, will begin screaming at you that biting someone is important right now, as everything is important right now. It basically amplifies the hunger by yelling it's extremely important that this is satiated. The hypothalamus is basically seizing at this point, as nothing it's doing is helping to regulate anything. And the frontal lobe, the dude who's supposed to be calming everything down, is sitting there with drool coming out of its mouth. So yeah, you're not doing so hot. The brain is like a bunch of systems put in place to regulate one another to create a conscious being. Once a few of those go out of whack, the behavior of that person can be completely shifted. Which brings us to the moment of clarity that shows the person is still somewhat in there. They're just being overwhelmed. All of these systems scream, attack, and eat. There is, for a moment, a point when Sloane calls out her sister's name where the attack does stop. But the thing to know, this isn't a moment of complete understanding of this is my sister. Instead, when you're walking around and sometimes you see someone that you think you know, but upon further inspection, it turns out you don't know them. That feeling you get for a second, oh, I know them. That's what this is. For some reason, the pattern of the face, the way maybe they sound or smell, it trips the brain's circuitry into autobiographical and emotional memory of the frontal lobe. Smells being a huge motivator of this, considering the olfactory bulb is located right under the prefrontal cortex, where memories are also stored. So that's why when you smell something, it triggers such a much stronger emotional memory. But as this happens, for a moment, a pathway in the frontal lobe fires cohesively that disrupts the absolute chaos of the brain. This lightning strike of information then floods through, stopping the attack signal for a second, as the sister likely feels like she remembers Sloane. But the moment passes and the attack recommences. This hesitation is caused by recognition, which is then overwhelmed moments later by the rest of the brain being completely lost in the sauce. Because that's all it is, really. Just a system that hasn't been completely destroyed that is then able to fire for just a moment. It's used to talk to or at least supposed to talk to the rest of the brain, doing its job for that moment, which just so happens to disrupt the attack pathway before it stops again, allowing for the chaos to resume. And in this way, this means all the circuitry in there is still probably somewhat functional, but the pathogen has induced so much neural inflammation and is actively attacking the neurons either by toxins or by entering them that it would have to be functionally cured before they could ever return to normal. And that's if they return to normal. The reality is meningitis and encephalitis actually do kill neurons, and so if it's allowed to continue as long as it has, it likely would result in brain damage. So then the question remains, what exactly is this? Well, first off, given its ability to bypass the blood-brain barrier, this is not an issue of bacteria. And I think I've already given away what it is, but whatever. Enjoy the ride. As this would, if it was bacteria, this would likely just use up nutrients in the body, grow out of control, and affect the whole body. And we would see a much more heavy immunological response to it, I guess, like sweating and to fever and all that stuff. It's clearly not a fungal infection, as we see no evidence of it growing, and this would take way too much time for it to affect everyone as it does, unless it's The Last of Us, in which case, yeah, I've actually done videos of The Last of Us, so if you want to understand how that could happen, you should go watch that. Anyways, it appears to me to be a fast-acting virus, way faster than it has any reason to be, but it appears to be part of a specific family. I know, you know, we're going there. This is highly likely to be a lyssavirus and not one that has been developed naturally through nature. No, this is definitely something that was created that then leaked out. Lyssaviruses, like rabies, which he said it, oh my god, desires the forbidden neuronal sauce. It will actually target the peripheral nervous system first, as then it moves up, nerve cell by nerve cell, backtracking to the central nervous system. Once it does, it will use proteins in the central nervous system as a conveyor belt to the brain, which then it will induce encephalitis. Well, your body will induce encephalitis, and it will disrupt function of the neurons, in particular with the brainstem. As this happens, this is where actually hydrophobia happens because, or at least appears, because the brainstem can no longer coordinate the esophagus to swallow water effectively due to the prevalent misfiring. There's also, I think it's aerophobia or whatever it is. Basically, breathing can make people freak out too. So functionally, the same thing is happening within the brain of those afflicted as well, and this is what is preventing them from recognizing or acting in a way they normally would. It is highly likely that it is using the same entry point as well. On the surface of neurons exists the G-glycoprotein, and this allows for the virus to attach to the surface of the neuron as then it enters. However, unlike most viruses, when they replicate and then rupture the cell, the lyssavirus is special. As it spreads out, it won't rupture the cell. However, once the neuron is invaded, this causes profound dysregulation, which means while the brain will look normal, it will not be firing normal. Interestingly, this is why you can have, again, a normal-looking brain, but it's riddled with rabies. So this tells us virtually everything we need to know, but also why it would be so hard to cure. If this infection is from a lyssavirus, from the lyssavirus family, it was created to be fast-acting. It's intentional. It's clear its purpose is to destabilize a population, making it difficult for the home country to control and deal with outside pressures as well. However, fundamentally, what you would need to do are so medically intensive that there's just no way to really prevent this logically with limited resources. Except you live in an area with unlimited resources for your population. What an absolute Chad, because you're just that guy, I guess, of that country. First, you need to disrupt the sympathetic response. You functionally would need to paralyze the response by dumping massive amounts of nitric oxide to expand blood vessels, insulin to promote glucose uptake, which will kind of help to stop you from feeling so hungry, oxytocin to lower stress, and melatonin to decrease neural arousal. A coma would actually work pretty well. Once a sympathetic response is countered, you have a vegetable before you, basically, a knocked out zombie, because the virus is still in there. By lowering the core temperature and administering an insane amount of antihistamines, you may be able to bring down the swelling in the brain and the meninges. However, it should be known any damage currently received would still remain. Now, given it's a lyssavirus status, let's assume it's a little bit like rabies then. With the medically induced coma, doctors have done this before by pumping a person full of ketamine, midazolam, ribavirin, and amantadine, and this is known as the Milwaukee Protocol, and it's been somewhat successful. It's not very successful, right? If you get bit by something, doesn't matter what kind of animal it is, if you get bit, you basically need to grab that animal, if you can. Like, let's say it's a house cat and it just bites you or something. You need to take Fluffy to the vet and make sure it doesn't have rabies. If you can't get a hold of that animal, which is much more advised, you need to assume it had rabies, and then you need to go immediately to a hospital to get a vaccination for it. But anyways, this gives the body a chance to catch up. In the case of the woman who survived, named Gianna Gase, her body eventually created the antibodies necessary, so she was able to naturally survive rabies. That does not happen very often. There's like 4 people we know of out of all of the cases who naturally survived rabies. That's negligible, right? So again, rabies does not destroy the brain, but it will cause misfiring of the neurons. The body then destroys itself. By applying a similar method to the infected, it may be possible to save them, as their immune system can then catch back up and in turn develop antibodies to immobilize the infection. Now the question is, does this clear the infection or just control it? Virtually somewhat the same, really. It's the same question. There are a few outcomes to this. If it just saves the individual, then it's entirely possible we have a 28 weeks scenario here, where the saliva of an infected person who is immune then infects others because they are not immune. And this means that the viral load is high enough in the saliva to be passed on, while it is no longer able to build up in any meaningful capacity in the body or neurons and then induce symptoms. Or it could be that the virus runs its course and then is basically the person simply does not produce the virus anymore. If this is the case, then actually being fully cured is the outcome, which is better, but again, this would completely overwhelm any medical capabilities of any country so rapidly that you might be able to save like a few people, but even that isn't assured due to the damage that is already likely built up in the brain. So ultimately, this type of infection, once it is started, you really do just have to nuke the area because you're not stopping it from spreading, I guess the best way to put it. But anyhow, I hope you enjoyed learning about this today. If you did enjoy, then please leave a like and a comment. As I've maintained, YouTube has switched to AI algorithms as of May. Likes and comments and subscribes and all that stuff are the most important metric now. Like, it used to be basically you could, randomly come back and not randomly come back to a channel, but like it would randomly cause random videos to explode. Doesn't happen anymore. In fact, YouTube, the first 3 days my video is uploaded, it doesn't even show you guys that it's there. It's so bizarre. So I released this on Friday. Well, no, I didn't. This one I released on Tuesday or Wednesday. You probably won't see it till Saturday. It's just how it goes. Anyhow, I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Roanoke Tales, and Roanoke Games, as well as Instagram links down in the description. And speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. At the Astronaut tier, we have Army and Kusith. Thank you guys for your awesome continued support. At the Astrophysicist tier, we have Death Dancer, Webtron Supreme, and Eddie the Ingy. Thank you guys also. And at the Scientist tier, we have the Chad of Chuds, Metric System, Invictus Echo, Official Texan, SSJ4 Lotus, and Gina Elaine. Thank you guys as well. And the rest of my patrons, I really do appreciate y'all's support. Keeps a lot of things running around here, so it keeps the cats fed so they don't eat me. It's fantastic, so it's greatly appreciated. All right, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next one.